Changing the environment. My first step as a teacher. When I first stepped into my field placement at Pioneer Middle School for 5th period, 8th grade U.S. history, I was hit with a bit of surprise. I had GT students. Students I expected to be highly engaged and motivated, but the reality was very different. It wasn't the environment I had expected. Instead, it felt distant, disconnected, and honestly a bit odd. There wasn't any laughter. There was no sense of community. While the students were compliant, yes, but there was no spark. There was no curiosity. There was no buy-in. It was more like they were going through the motion. The teacher delivered content, but students didn't seem to care much about it. That's when I realized something I hadn't fully understood before, that a classroom can look fine on its surface and still be struggling beneath. What stood out the most was that the students didn't seem to feel known. There was no building connections, and that mattered. I started to understand something essential about learners, something I'll carry with me to every classroom, that even gifted students need relationships. In fact, especially gifted students. They want to be seen, valued, and respected, not just for their ability, but for who they are. Without that, they shut down, even if they're fully capable of performing well academically. I also began to reflect on instruction. Watching those lessons, I saw that simply delivering content isn't enough. You can know every fact about the American Revolution or the Constitution, but if you don't make it matter to the students in front of you, they won't engage. Learning doesn't happen without connection. I made a choice to focus on relationships. I started talking to the students between activities, asking about their weekends or their favorite subjects. I made eye contact, smiled, learned their names, and showed I cared about them, not just as a student, but as a person. It wasn't instant, but I noticed changes. Some of the quitter students started speaking up more. They asked me questions about the lesson or even made jokes. One student who had barely spoken up at all when I arrived finally gave me fist bumps walking into the door. The room felt more human, and that shift reminded me how powerful connections really is. Through this experience, I learned that the classroom environment is instruction. You can't separate the two. A positive environment sets the stage for learning. It influences behavior, engagement, and even student confidence. Students need to feel safe to take academic risk, and that safety comes from the relationships and tone we create in a room. But I didn't just learn about students or instruction. I learned about myself. I realized that I noticed the energy of a room, the body language of students, and the tone a teacher uses when giving feedback. I care deeply about how a classroom feels, not just what's being taught. I want to be a teacher who leads with presence, someone who creates a space where students know they matter, where they feel supported, challenged, and understood. I want my classroom to be a place where learning is possible, not just because of what I teach. Thank you.